Simulive? Simulated live? Just what are we talking about? Where should this fit in your marketing mix? And how do you get the most for your money? Hey, hello, and welcome to Don't Make These Mistakes with Your Simulated Live webinars. My name is Roger Courville, and welcome to another episode of Thought Leader Conversations, sponsored by the crew here at Virtual Venues, where you can take your virtual and hybrid event production team needs to a blue chip crew who can help you achieve excellence and results by helping you focus on something other than the tech and the process and that kind of stuff. Hey, I am tickled because with me here today is fellow industry old-timer, senior program marketing manager here at V2, Jessica Bradford. Jessica, before we get rolling, welcome and tell us a little more about yourself.
Thanks, Roger, for having me back. I am a senior program manager here at V2, so that means I produce webinars for some of our more higher touch clients. Right now, I'm working with ServiceNow is one amongst them, as well as FICO. So a lot of clients kind of in the financial industry as well. Anything that's a little bit out of the box might be a little bit more than what we typically do on a day-to-day. They throw at me. So happy to be here.
Which is a great way of, a very nice way of saying, Jess knows her crap. And whether it's video editing or getting down into the weeds with some particular platform, whether it's Zoom webinars or On24 or something like that, Jess knows how to help you get where you want to go. So, but today we're talking about a very specific kind of use case. Jess, what is Simulive or simulated live when it comes to virtual events or webinars?
Well, I thought you would never ask. So Simulive webinars or simulated live, as you said, is a presentation that is either completely pre-recorded or has pre-recorded segments that are blended with live. So like what you might refer to as a Sim 2 Live in that instance. And this hybrid approach or that pre-recorded approach allows you to have a pretty awesome polished presentation while kind of maintaining that element of live with this same sort of audience interaction.
When
In a
you
nutshell.
say maintain that element of live, what are you talking about? Let's just be clear.
Well, when you're doing a simulated live webinar, you can include all of the same elements that you would as if it was live. So polling questions, surveys, a live demonstration, all of those things can be pre-recorded and presented as if it was broadcasting live. So the audience would have no idea that this was something that was pre-recorded on a different day than what is actually being broadcasted on. So literally, you can make this just like it was live. So it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, which is rather interesting. What's the word I'm looking for? A rather interesting intersection or melding of modalities that, interestingly, we don't experience when we're in person, right? I mean, in person,
Mm-hmm.
somebody's on stage and
Mm-hmm.
they make a presentation, and possibly we got a camera crew there and we record the thing, and now you're
Right.
either there live or
Right.
you've got the recording of the thing being live. And now we're
Uh-huh.
talking about blending those elements where
Mm-hmm.
it still shows up. Maybe you still kick it off at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday morning,
Mm-hmm.
but some elements are live and some elements are pre-recorded or put together in advance.
Right.
And I think that's kind of interesting with regard to the new potential that brings to somebody's marketing mix. So put on your possibility thinking. Why would someone do this? What are the different use cases of why someone might want to do something simulated live?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why you might do this, but the big one, or a couple of the big ones that I would say I run into, is speakers not being available for that. So let's say you like really want to do this on September 21st at 11 a.m. Pacific because you know that's a really good time for your audience to join. You've done research, you know, like that's a really good time of day, and that's the day you want to broadcast this live. But your speakers or speaker just can't be there that day. They could be traveling. They could have, you know, they're taking the day off. You mentioned, Roger, that you had a situation where you had a surgeon or a doctor who was presenting and he was going to be on call that day, so there was a likelihood he was going to have to step away. So any of those kind of situations, make it great to then pre-record the content at a different time, and so you can still broadcast it at that peak day and time that you want, where you know the audience is going to be able to join, and your attendance is going to be, you know, as high as you can get it.
Yeah, that. Well, I remember that one particular situation because it was an actual client scenario.
Uh-huh.
And the pre-record actually was done as a contingency plan because the plan was still
Oh.
to have the surgeon speak at the live event.
Okay.
But backup was done because between when the whole thing got scheduled and then when the thing went live, in between, the surgeon got, I don't know, the next month's schedule or something and went, I'm going to be on call. And if my pager goes, this is back in the days of pagers, back when, you know, those of us who have white hair still in $5. But if my pager goes off, I have a commitment to go run into emergency surgery to do the heart transplant or whatever
Right.
his thing was. And so the backup recording was made actually as a contingency plan. But you know, interestingly, you just brought up something, Jessica, that to me is a really important part of that value creation process, right? Because you just said, hey, what if you got this, you want to do the event on September 21st and your presenter's not available? That could be something, you know, back in July when you're planning the event, or it could be the kind of thing that comes up between when you start planning the event in July and what happens on September 21st. And you go, oops, because it was going to be the VP of XYZ, and now the VP of XYZ decides it's more valuable to, you know, fly to Europe to close the deal as opposed to present at your webinar. Now what?
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, I've had a lot of clients switching to Simulive more and more because they just ran into so many issues like that, where somebody has a family emergency last minute, and we've been in situations where we're going to run a live webinar and we've been kind of like, oh, like really like scrambling, like now what are we going to do? We have to get somebody within like you know, within 2 hours to try to come cover for that person. So it's nice to not even really have to worry about that, you
Right.
know.
So that's a bit of the why, or a number of whys, and there's probably, to be fair, a range of potential reasons why someone might want to consider this as a modality. But let's talk about the how. When it comes to just what you have seen, because I'm just going to look right into the camera and look at you in the audience in the eye, and I'm going to say, if you don't know Jessica Bradford, you really should, because this gal knows her crap. Over the years, we've seen a lot of these things, and the question is, what makes them sing versus those who don't really produce? What have you seen? And maybe we even parse it out. There's the promotion part, there's the production part, there's the presentation part. Pick one of those, and how do we help someone just get excellence out of a simulated live event?
Sure. Well, let me start with the I would say presentation creation coordination part. That part honestly shouldn't be much different than if the webinar was live. You should still plan on rehearsing, knowing your content inside and out. And I don't mean reading from a script. I just mean organically feeling comfortable, confident to present that content as if it was live. And if you are
Wait a
including,
minute. Before you go on, I just got to
yeah.
say this. Don't ever read from a freaking script.
Try not
That's what
to.
Roger's going to say right here.
Yeah.
Don't ever read from a freaking script. Okay, Jessica,
Yeah.
back to you.
Some people are good at reading edits from a script, but usually you can tell. Um, but yeah, what I was gonna say was, yeah, so with the coordination part, it really shouldn't, with the prep, I should say, it shouldn't be that much different, really, right? You still want to know everything inside and out. And if you're doing interactive elements in this presentation, which you really should, um, make sure you practice with those just the same. So before you plan on doing the recording, it's good to just do a rehearsal. So okay, I'm gonna do a poll here, practice launching that as if it was live, right? Practice doing your demonstration, all of those elements that even if though it's being recorded, just make sure you're running through them, because I feel like with that piece, a lot of people get lax in that. They're like, oh, we're recording this, so I don't really need to rehearse because like I'll just mess up a bunch of times and then we can just edit it, which you can do, but it saves everybody a lot more time if you just kind of prepare a little bit more. So pretty obvious, but a good reminder.
You know,
Um,
let me interject.
yeah.
There's the opposite of that too, right?
Mhm.
There are
Totally.
people who freeze up because it's being
Mhm.
recorded, right? And
Totally.
now,
Mhm.
because here's the thing, if we're just having this natural conversation and I
Mhm.
make a mistake, I don't stop to think, oh, I just made a mistake. It's just
Mhm.
part of you and me having a
Exactly.
conversation. In fact, the academic world calls those disfluencies. But
Yeah.
when somehow when the recording starts to happen,
Yes.
there are some people who just freeze up, right? It's like,
It
oh, I didn't say it quite right,
totally.
and
It is
right,
it's
and
psychological, 100%.
totally,
It is psychological, and um yeah, I honestly think, and it's funny because I've had people say, "I didn't make this many mistakes when I've done this live." And I'm like, yeah, it's funny how that happens. And that's why, again, I think practicing, again, you don't have to try to make it perfect, but just so you feel comfortable doing it, like just doing it in the recording as if you're alive.
yep.
And then, like you were saying, on the flip side of that, Roger, with the production, yeah, obviously you want to have the best audio and video that you can have. You want to have your lighting be as best as you can. Um, and then, honestly, just go through. I always tell people, just try to go through it once. If you have to break and restate something, fine. If you really feel like you need to, but I feel like if you, even if you have ums or you pause, or you got to grab something over here. It's best to honestly just try to get through it one time, because honestly, that's always the first take's usually the best, and you don't really want to over, like we were talking about, over edit. Trying to edit every little, like pause out every little mistake. It's okay to be a human and realize, like, we pause to think, right, about our responses, to think about, especially if you're doing interactive stuff, that's expected. And honestly, I feel like if it's too perfect, people might know it's recorded, right? We're
Hmm.
trying to make it feel like it's not. So, just be careful of over editing and trying to make it too perfect, because humans are not perfect.
I'm going to put an
and that's
exclamation
and
point
that's okay.
on that for this reason. And I come at things from a different perspective because you're
Mhm.
producer extraordinaire, and my basis of life was presentation skills training.
Mhm.
And one of the challenges, to your point, is is when it is too perfect, it can be unnatural,
Mhm. Yes, and
right?
people might pick up on that, right?
Totally. And authentic beats perfect every time
Totally.
because your
Totally.
goal isn't perfect delivery of content. Your goal is to reach through the medium and connect with the person on the other side, right?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
not connecting to, it's connecting through. And
Mhm.
honestly, people don't expect you to be perfect. They want value, and if you can bring them something of value, uh,
Exactly.
that's that's a powerful thing, and that's one of the powerful parts of this medium. Of course, we need to pay attention to those kinds of things that might hurt your process, right? Like
Right.
if you had too many ums and ahs, then that hurts
Mhm.
the process, right? A
Right.
few ums and ahs are part of just how we communicate. If
Right.
it was over and 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 over,
Sure.
and over and over,
Right.
then we hurt the process of communication. So that's
And
the
it could
difference
be
with
distracting.
Jessica's part
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
To point, and I'm going to just put an exclamation point on this. Authentic beats perfect every day, right? Remember, in this particular contest, we're talking about simulated live. In fact,
Mhm.
ideally, they don't even realize that the presentation part, or the presentation part that we flew in, because I'm sure you have too. I've done events where one or two of the presenters were live, and
Mhm.
one of the presenters was pre-recorded,
Uh-huh.
and that's okay.
That's
The
okay.
point is, you shouldn't know. Right? The
You
point
don't,
is,
yeah.
the point
Yeah.
is, you're delivering content, you're delivering value, you're interacting with polls and questions and chat. People who put something into chat are getting responses that like they're
Yeah.
actually there, and there's a reason for them to be there live.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
And one cool thing I actually feel like people don't often take advantage of, especially Sim2 live webinars. So, maybe you're not doing the live, but a lot of times the speakers will come on and they'll do a live Q&A. So like I mentioned, Sim2 Live. So the bulk of the presentation is pre-recorded, but they still have time to maybe come in at the end and come in and be on camera to answer questions or be behind the scenes and answer questions. And honestly, in those instances, I feel like they get to more questions because they're just all they're focusing on behind the scenes while the presentation's playing back, right? So they can really deep dive into the questions, have more thoughtful responses um, than if it was live. And the other thing, in terms we were talking about how with the production, what you want to try to think about with the Sim2 Live, and if you're pre-recording and then coming back to do a live Q&A, you'll want to try to make that seamless as possible. So remember what you're going to have to wear the same thing that you did when you recorded. You want to be in the same place, right? So you have the same background. So if you want to use a virtual background, then that will make that easier if possible. But you want to try to match the lighting so as best as you can so that you can have that kind of seamless experience with that
Mm. I want to highlight that because that is a piece of wisdom and experience. And I don't want, if somebody's listening to this right here and now, I don't want that to have slipped past because somebody's just kind of like got us on in the background. Did you just hear what Jess said? If you're going to like record it, then when you actually show up to do live Q&A relative to being in a sense next to your pre-record, you're going to want
Uh-huh,
to, I don't know, wear the same shirt and have the same lighting so it doesn't look too
uh-huh.
obvious that the previous version was of you was the Memorex version. So
Yeah,
that's awesome. Thank you, Jess.
yeah.
So there's the why, there's a bit of the how, and by the way, you'll be able to find the transcript of this on our website at virtualvenues.com/blog. And Jess wrote a blog post about this very thing. Jess, any other operational things before we close out with a few what ifs?
I think the big thing is again just like I mentioned, don't forget to engage your audience. That's really huge. Obviously live or simulated live, but I feel like sometimes people will record something, play it back, and then they don't really think about adding those things because they think it's going to be too hard. When I honestly promise you it's not. It's the same. So don't be scared to add those same things you would do live, polls, live demonstrations. Don't be afraid to talk to the audience when you're recording as if they're there. Even if it's just me that you're talking to, I will cheer you on. We're here. We want you to engage with them because again, that's what's going to keep people staying on your event and coming back for others. So, I think that's
Yeah,
it.
and you know what? I think that's worth even just underlining for a moment because the tactical how of how that happens is obviously going to depend on what platform you're using, right? I mean, we
Sure.
host a whole lot of stuff on 24, on
Hmm.
Zoom, both Zoom meetings, Zoom webinars, etc., WebEx, etc. And the tactical how is going to depend on exactly which one of those platforms we're helping you execute on, right?
100%.
For instance, on On24, playing a pre-recorded video of a presentation still means that the entirety of the console, all of those interaction and engagement tools
Mhm.
are all still totally at your disposal, right?
Yes.
Do I want to have a link
100%.
to somebody's LinkedIn profile? Do I want to have, what am I doing about handouts and downloads, et cetera, et cetera,
Mhm.
right? How you do that in
Yeah.
Zoom might not operate the same way, but it's
Right.
still great. To your point, it's still great to be thinking about, hey, we have a chance to be engaging an audience in
Mhm.
real time,
Mhm.
albeit some part of it is pre-recorded. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
just let's think forward a little bit for our closing couple minutes here.
Okay.
What are those what ifs? What are those kind of maybe use cases that people maybe haven't thought about? And I know we've talked about a few, but
Mhm.
what if, when you're helping somebody with a bit of possibility thinking, going, oh, I hadn't even thought about that. What if we did,
Mhm.
or what if we did that? Just out of curiosity, any particular use case or tactic come to mind?
Um, you know, thinking about that, the with the option of Simulives, you might have the ability to get speakers that you wouldn't normally if you were doing it
Mm,
live.
yes.
And maybe like external speakers,
Right.
right? So maybe they're pretty booked, but like, hey, they're like, we can jump on to record this, even though we can't be on the broadcasted live date. Um, so that's something that you could, I think use to your benefit. Um,
No, let me wait
maybe,
before
yeah, go
you
ahead.
do
Sorry.
the next one. Since I spent a whole lot of years on the road as a professional speaker, let
Yeah.
me let me assure you that is a killer potential place to create value. Because
Mhm.
here's the thing. Let's just use the webinar virtual events industry as an example. Most
Mhm.
events happen Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings,
Mhm.
right?
That's
Uh,
the time people want. Yeah.
right. But
Yep.
if you want to get somebody's time, maybe they're available on a Monday afternoon or a Friday afternoon, and you
Mhm.
can get them recorded so that you can run the event when you want, right? Or as a
Exactly.
guy who's done a lot of professional speaking, um, hey, I'm going to be traveling,
Mhm.
but I have availability on a Saturday morning to make a recording
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
Especially
if
for those
you're
sought after guest speakers like you. 100%.
right, if you're pursuing someone who is in demand,
Mhm.
figuratively or literally, you can get them for cheaper if you're getting them outside of prime time hours.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that part, but yeah, absolutely.
Keep going.
Um, let's see. Um, I think well, I kind of just want to circle back to something you mentioned, but you could use this as a backup plan,
Mhm.
like you did with that situation with the surgeon. So if you're even slightly worried that something could happen with one of your speakers, like I mentioned, this is a great option to just have, and then you have that extra recording, which never hurts either. So I think that's a really good example of why you might use this. Um, Also, I've had situations where I think we touched on this too, where you just can't get all the speakers together at once to be on a live event. Like either there's time zone differences, like with ServiceNow, they're just their own internal speakers. They're such a global company that they just can't coordinate them to get them in the same place at the same time. It's just too hard.
Right.
And even then, we'll just record them separately and then edit it together, and you would never know. So, I mean, there's a lot of options. It's very a flexible medium, which, um, yeah, I think that people are starting to take advantage of, but there's just so much opportunity with that.
I haven't I haven't seen this anytime recently, um, but way back in the day, and this is going to date me, but right after 9/11, um, a very large tech company hired Rudy Giuliani, who at the time
No.
was the mayor of New York, right? Which was
Uh-huh.
a really big deal right
Right.
after 9/11, right? Regardless of what you think about politics, there was this moment culturally. And um, at the time, I even remember this. I can probably share this now, but at the time, paid him $100,000, and he came on and spoke for 20 minutes on an event.
Mhm. Wow.
That first event was actually all live. So he
Mhm.
spoke, and then after that, because they had a web-based security product, then the product manager came on and did a product demo and blah blah blah. But they recorded Rudy Giuliani, and then they reran that event more than
Mhm.
70 times, where
Yes.
each time number 2 and time number 72 was the kind of the big name speaker being
Uh-huh.
run again. And then each time the product manager would come on and do a product demo and blah, blah, blah. And it was a radically successful thing. We did more than 70 events with,
Wow. That's
with Rudy
70 events, that's
Giuliani as
insane.
the speaker. And he only spoke at one event. So there was an example of both a strategy based on both a live event, but then, in a sense, a
Mhm.
simulated live after that, too. So um, all kinds of crazy things that you can accomplish if you just allow it to be allow yourself a little bit of creativity relative to maybe just thinking about how you've always seen webinars, quote unquote, being done. and
Mhm.
and
Uh,
and I'm proud to say I work with a killer team here at V2, including Jess, who has done so many of these things and has that experience of editing video and working with presenters who is just an exciting thing to even describe, because I know how good this team is at helping clients get where they need to go. So, Jess, any other questions that I should have asked you that I haven't asked you?
Oh, thanks, Roger. No, I mean, I think we covered all of the big ones. I'll probably think of something later after this, of course. But if I do, I will throw it up onto a blog, make it available. But thanks again so much, Roger. This, as always, is super fun to just be able to have a chat with you and, talk about all the stuff that we've been doing for a long time together.
For a long time. And
Consider,
with
what'd you say,
that,
40 years combined?
we are, yeah, right. We are seriously glad you've been with us on another episode of Thought Leader Conversations, sponsored by the crew at virtualvenues.com. And we will see you the next time around.